Hey, Corky here. I wanted to do some guitar talk for all the beginning, intermediate guitar players out there. So, thanks for watching us today. Um, I'm not going to dazzle too many guitar players today because of I over the 52 years I've been playing guitar. Um, I have basically always bought bottom of the line guitars, although they have been, name brand since the 70s, early 70s. Um, and I wanted to put my friends out here with me today and talk about why I have these guitars and why I don't have others. Um, Obviously, I'm a baby boomer. Uh, Became a teenager during the summer of love. And so I'm going to be partial to what people today call classic rock or contemporary Christian type styles. And when I say contemporary Christian, I'm talking about primarily 70s, 80s, 90s of that, not the things that's going on in Christian music today necessarily. Although I like a lot of that, I'm proud that my children are all involved in producing that music. I started out with a Silvertone $14.95 acoustic and learned to play on that guitar and even got paid a few dollars with that guitar playing at, you know, coffee houses and parties and things. And so Sears and Roebuck catalog was responsible for a great deal of the popularization of the guitar in America. And so I was one of those that got a Sears Silvertone guitar through the catalog. We picked it up at the warehouse. And it was a very humble guitar, but it was a good guitar. And my partner Alan, he also got one just like it. And that's where we did our first songwriting on those two acoustic guitars. So I recommend that guitar players start out on acoustic. Um, and they usually balk at that idea because they're attracted to playing guitar because of, popularization that they hear uh, of the electric guitar shredders and so forth. But you want the guitar to be your friend. You want to be able to play music socially among friends, and so the acoustic guitar is what I started on. Not long thereafter, got my first electric, which was a Gibson Melody Maker. Uh, it was a small scale kind of guitar, and it was a great little guitar. I kind of miss it sometimes. Um, and that's where I first started playing bottleneck guitar and in a band and all of that, because I'd started out on bass and never really learned anything on bass. In those first few combos I played in, um, I would return to bass years later after learning the guitar and played bass quite a bit, traveled throughout North South Carolina and Georgia playing bass for a while. Uh, and once you get guitar, you know what the bass is for. And so, at any rate, speaking of acoustics, I've got a Yamaha acoustic back here that's a grand concert model, which means it's not as big as a jumbo, not as small as some others. A grand concert's a medium to small body, and it's particularly suited for fingerstyle guitar playing. So when I'm sitting around the house or on the couch or whatever playing, a lot of times I'm working out these fingerstyle guitar solos. Um, I like Chet Atkins or some others. And so I recommend that if you're going to play fingerstyle guitar, that means where your thumb is doing the bass and your fingers are picking out the melody and so forth. Uh, I recommend a grand concert size. It's got electronics in it, and it's just one of those days. I think I was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and went in the Guitar Center and saw it, and fell in love with it and bought it that day. Um, and so I've been playing it for several years. Uh, and I've got a little preamp that goes with it. Uh, and I'm going to do another video on my gear rundown of my pedals and amps separate from this. This is mostly guitars talk today. So that's the acoustic, and I'm a steel string acoustic. Um, I had a classical for a while, and there's certainly a place in recording for a classical guitar, a nylon string guitar. Um, I love to do Latin type things and with a flat pick on a classical, and I added that to several of my songs and my albums and so forth like that. So I recommend Yamaha's a good. Once again, I don't buy top of the line. I do have one guitar here today that's top of the line, but Yamaha's very available, very accessible price wise and so forth. And it was very popular early in my development. There were a lot of Yamaha guitars around. I've had a number of acoustics in my life. I've had Ovations, Martin. I've had Alvarez, so forth, Guild. So these are all great guitars. Um, Now, on the case of electrics, I want to talk about two guitars in particular. This one came out when I was born, 1954, the Fender Stratocaster. And everybody's familiar with the Fender Stratocaster. This happens to be one made in Mexico. Um, and I really love it. I got it since I've been here in Alabama, and it's not a real expensive guitar, and the Mexican ones are really good. What has happened historically uh, in the guitar industry is when I was a teenager, that's when, Stratocasters, Telecasters, and Les Pauls and all became really popular during the 60s and 70s. And uh, at that time, they were almost reachable financially by a young guitar player. But I always had to get a used one to be able to afford it. But anyway, now my generation has grown to the age to where they're actually owning the music companies. And because they really adore the Stratocaster and the Les Paul and Teles, they overprice them and they drive them way up. And there's probably a lot of other dynamics like material costs and things like that. But they're unreachable to the average musician. This Telecaster here is a B-bender, Nashville Tele, goes for like 500 and some dollars. That's not even the top of the price range for these guitars. Well, if you get these guitars with all the extras and American made and so forth like that, you're going to pay thousands of dollars now. Well, as a result of that happening, the secondary line guitars, like this is a Squire, which is the secondary line of Fender. This is a Epiphone, which is the junior line of Gibson. It actually raised the value and quality of Squire and Epiphones up. Now, there have always been big time players playing Epiphones, okay? And today, a lot of blues players play Squires. Now, this is a Squire Affinity Telecaster right here. My wife got it for me. It only cost $195, or at least it did at that time. And it is a blistering little guitar. And I recommend that as a beginning electric. I had a visitor yesterday, a guitar player visited me yesterday, and he has a Squire Affinity Stratocaster, and he's very happy with it. Um, but the quality of the Squires and Epiphones have come up, and you can see celebrities playing Epiphones all the time. Of course, the Beatles played Epiphone casinos in the studio and live and everything, and you know, Paul McCartney wrote yesterday on an Epiphone acoustic, um, one of those inspired by Texas or Texan, whatever. And so I have this Telecaster here. Now, obviously, the pickups are not going to be on this guitar what they are on this one, which is a American uh, Nashville Tele, and it has a Strat pickup in the middle, which makes it special. Uh, this would is far superior pickups than this one, but it's these are tools in your toolbox to use them for whatever you want to use them for. When you're in the studio, these inexpensive guitars, you might get a little hum out of them, and they might prefer that you play one of these, uh, you know, higher level guitars because of noise. So, at any rate, the two guitars that I have been characterized by playing since the 70s myself have been Stratocasters and Telecasters. Um, so all the 52 years I played, almost all those years I played either a Tele or a Strat. I did have a Les Paul for a couple of years in Atlanta, and it got stolen while we were loading. And I was not all that happy with that Les Paul. They're real heavy. Um, to get a double coil sound or a humbuckler sound, of course you can get that with that right here. It's kind of a humbuckler. But my Epiphone ES335 is a very popular style of guitar, whether it was Gibson or Epiphone, B.B. King, Eric Clapton, um, Alvin Lee, Elvin Bishop, uh, many players played an ES335, and I just adore this guitar. This is the ES335 Pro by Epiphone. So when I'm doing jazzy things or I'm doing mellow blues, you know, not blues rock, I will tend to use this guitar. Also, it's very good for slide. Uh, and so that. Behind me here, over my shoulder, is a Jethro Burns Washburn F5 mandolin. Those of you know who Jethro Burns is. It's a with Homer and Jethro comedy team, but he was a gifted jazz mandolin player. And then beside it is my ukulele. This is my called it Flute Company, and it's called a Flea. And then I think behind that is my old mandolin, which I got in 1973, and I've played it ever since. I got it off my roommate Floyd. So I obviously you see by these two guitars here, the Tele and the Strat, that I favor a maple fingerboard. They're brighter to me, and as you get old, you lose your. I've lost all my 5K because of playing in a lot of bands, and so I really need a bright instrument with a lot of high tones, and the maple tends to be brighter. Um, and you know, because of Robbie Robertson and Roy Buchanan and uh, Eric Clapton and a number of these other influences, that causes me to favor this. Now, there is a time and a place for a rosewood fingerboard, and and there are sounds you can get out of a rosewood fingerboard on a Tele or a Strat that you can't get with these here. Okay, um, but you know, I recommend. Obviously, I'm not dazzling anybody with my collection. I've had a lot of other guitars, but I've never kept that many um, at the same time. I usually trade it up or something like that. So, um, trying to think of something else to say about guitars. Um, these guitars, some of these went all the way through South America and back, um, on an airplane in baggage. When I first started making trips to South America to play, I was questioning some of the pickers in Nashville about whether or not they insured their instruments when they traveled, because I know that guitars had been destroyed on conveyors and things. They said they didn't insure theirs. They just put them in baggage, and they have a problem ever so often. But any rate, at that point, what I had at that point, that when I went to Uruguay, I took every instrument I owned on the plane, and they all came back safely. So I was very grateful for that. Um, the I also have a black 1983 Stratocaster, which I keep in South Dakota. My buddy Steve keeps it for me because I sit in with a Native American band in and out of South Dakota, Minnesota, and stuff like places like that we go to. And I leave it out there with him, so that I don't have to put a guitar on an airplane when I go to South Dakota to connect with that band. They're called White Horse. You might look them up. They're really great. They sound a little bit like Los Lobos, and it's a Christian worship band. Um, but at any rate, I'm happy to come to you today on this 4th of July weekend. And this one's a little long, but I hope that I said something that maybe cleared up questions for somebody. Um, but I'll be excited to see you become more prolific in your guitar playing. And thank God for uh, these instruments that have been our friends over the years. Okay, I'm going to let you go. This is Corky signing out. Adios, amigo.